Hi, I'm Mick Shah. I'm founder of Mickey Studios. We are a wedding photography and video company. We cover weddings in the UK and all over the world. I'm also privileged enough to be a Sony ambassador, one of only two on the video side in the UK. And in this course, we're going to be covering the basics and an introduction to how to shoot and film weddings.
All eyes on the way I vibe when I walk into the room. Wind blows underneath the soles of my brand new pair of shoes. No sweat in the way I step, I got a fresh new attitude. Oh my, call me a king, you can buy me.
This course is really aimed at people who, maybe you've got a camera and you're about to shoot your first wedding, maybe this is an area you want to get into, or maybe you've started shooting a few weddings and you want to, some tips and tricks and hints on maybe how you could do things a little bit differently or maybe a little bit better, or learn from someone who's maybe experienced in that area. So we're going to be covering things like what kind of gear would I suggest having. We're going to be looking at shooting techniques, how you deal with a couple, how to shoot table decor, B-roll, and all these other things, camera settings, and all these other things that are relevant to shooting a wedding. Now, weddings are up and down the scale, and they're all different levels of experience. So I'm assuming that the kind of people we're going to be watching this course are not necessarily going to be shooting 300 people weddings with multiple camera ops and multiple cameras. And most likely, when you're going out there to shoot your first kind of weddings, they're going to be more the smaller variety, maybe more intimate. And so I'm going to be looking at that from that kind of aspect in terms of the gear that I would recommend, how I would shoot those weddings, and things to think about on the wedding day as we go in. But before we get into all that, a little bit about myself and how did I get here. So I started shooting weddings in 2011, I want to say, and up to date, I've probably been at around 500 weddings. That's a lot of weddings, so it's a lot of experience. And I actually didn't start as a wedding filmmaker. I actually started as a photographer. And I was a musician before, and my wife got pregnant, and she actually bought me a camera and a lens. It was like, look, learn to take pictures of the baby. And I was like, But I was like, okay, if I'm gonna get into this, I'm gonna learn how to do it properly. So went on YouTube, as you do, and learned a bunch of stuff off Google, and was like, I think, okay, cool. But one of the first things I did was I made myself shoot in manual, which was a good thing, I think, because it made me really learn about the camera. And so I just devoured everything there was about shooting, and basically once our son was born, started shooting the baby and my, not shooting the baby, but you know what I mean, taking photos of the baby and my wife. And back then, put it out on Facebook, and the reaction that I got was really heartwarming. And what really people gravitated towards, and what I really loved, was the interaction between my wife and my son. It was like that, capturing that relationship. And I was kind of like, I found that addictive, and was like, okay, what kind of photography could I do that was relevant to that? And it was like weddings, weddings, there's loads of life events, people happening and relationships and stuff. And that would be a really cool thing to document. And came back home, I was like, I think I'm going to become a wedding photographer. And usually my wife is the same person in our relationship, and she'll veto anything. And she was like, that's a good idea. And so that was the green light to go. And so started photographing weddings. And so that was great. And then around about 2017, my wife got pregnant with our second son. And by this time, I was shooting loads of weddings, and the business was going really well. But when I was expecting our second son, I found myself looking more at videos of our first son, Ethan, to remember what it felt like. And I found that really interesting as a photographer, that I wasn't looking at photos and I was looking at video. And it was something about video where you can hear the voice, you can see the movement, you can see the action, that kind of took me back to what it felt like to be there. And I was like, you know what? Are my wedding couples missing out on that same thing? Because photography is amazing. It can freeze frame a moment in time, and maybe you've got some speeches where the dad is pouring out his heart, and you take an epic photo of that moment. But you can't remember or listen to exactly what was said. And that's a different thing about video. And so that kind of started my journey into wedding filmmaking. And I was very fortunate that a lot of the skills that you pick up on photography, like learning how to use a camera, lenses, lens choice, composition, working with light, looking for moments, were easy to transition to video, but there were a whole load of other skills that I kind of needed to learn as well. And those were things like learning how to work with multiple cameras. Sound is a big thing when it comes to video. Capturing motion, not moving too fast, learning to keep still to capture the moment and make sure you've got that moment. And so one of the biggest things of transitioning from photography to video, and as a good tip when you're filming a wedding, is that when a moment happens with photography, you just need to capture that moment. With film, you kind of need 3 seconds into the moment. You need the moment itself, and then you need the 3 seconds out. And so that was a big transition. And where did I learn all of that stuff from? Well, going back to YouTube again, there was a load of resources on YouTube, and actually signed up with a really well-respected wedding filmmaker just to kind of make sure that on my first wedding that I would hit the ground running. Now, because I was in the photographic world, wedding photography world, I had a load of friends who were shooting weddings, and I just kind of reached out and was like, you know, look, if any of your couples are ever looking for video, I'm just starting and I would love to offer a video. My thinking was like, because they kind of invest in photography, they would kind of know and be, be au fait with kind of like good imagery, but at the same time, because they haven't invested in video and they were kind of allowing me to come along, there wouldn't be that much pressure. And so reached out to a couple of friends and was very fortunate that the first wedding I bagged was in Iceland. I know, right? Like, what a gig. And so that was really cool, but it was a massive learning experience because we were going to firstly going to a foreign country. Secondly, it was windy. And thirdly, it was learning a bunch of stuff. Like I say, transitioning from photography to film, like you had to think about sound. You had to think about the fact that when the bride was coming down the aisle and then suddenly you realize now you needed to be over there where they were going to take the vows, that you had to run. But you couldn't just take a shot and then move. You had to film that whole thing. And then how did you do that? And then cursing yourself in the edit for like, why did you move? And stuff like that. So it was thinking and learning all those things. And then the second wedding that I got was in Ibiza. I know, tough life, right? And so those two weddings, I was really fortunate that I had a wedding brand already and we had clients coming in. And because those two weddings were a little bit glamorous in the terms of like Iceland and Ibiza, when we kind of showed that portfolio, it kind of meant that couples were like, okay, well, if people invested in him to go to these countries, I think we're going to trust him with our wedding video as well. So it was really easy in terms of that transition. So you're probably watching this and thinking, well, that's great for you, but how do I get into my first wedding? So I just want to cover a few things now, a few tips and some advice if you're looking to get into weddings and filming weddings. So the first thing is, how do you get those weddings right? Because it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. It's like, okay, I need portfolio to show other couples to book me, but then how do I get portfolio when I haven't even shot a wedding yet? So the first thing I would really encourage you to do is network. So in my story, I was a photographer, so I reached out to my network of photography friends, and so that's how I bagged my first gig. But what about for you? Well, the great thing is that you already have a network. They might not be photographers or people working in the wedding industry, but they might be people who are getting married. So going back to my photographic career, the first wedding I ever shot was, because I was a musician, there was a musician I knew and her manager was getting married, and I was like, let me just approach him and say, hey, can I shoot your wedding for free? Kind of like a wedding present. And the second wedding I booked was, I basically plastered it all over social media that I was shooting weddings or I was getting into photography. And then he recommended me to a work colleague. I was like, hey, you're getting married, you're looking for a photographer. I know this guy who's really keen into photography. He could shoot a wedding. And I'd say it's the same thing for you. I say the first thing you need to do is you need to let people know that you are into this video thing. So even if you're not shooting wedding or filming weddings yet, film everything and anything. So when it came to photography and even filming, the first people that I filmed were my kids and my family, and put that on social media and practiced. And I wanted to be known as the photo guy or the video guy, right? So that when anybody who was in my local network, friends, people who were colleagues, anybody, when they thought photo, they thought me. And so for you, when they think video, they're going to think you, right? and they're going to go, and so, you know, put it out. Don't be shy to put it out there that you are passionate about video making and that you love doing it, and to put examples of your work, because then you'll be in the front of your local network's mind on friends and family when they're thinking about video. And then put it out there, be brave, put it out there that, hey, if anybody's getting married, if you know anybody's getting married, I'd love to shoot their wedding, I'd love them to come and talk to me. And you'd be surprised how many people know how many other people, you know, that whole 6 degrees of separation thing, you know, and somehow, somewhere, if you put it out there enough, I'm pretty confident that someone's going to come back and go, you know what, I know someone who's getting married and they need a film. You do that film thing, right? Do you think you'd be, and that's basically going to be your in. And what I'd say is, once you bag that first wedding, prepare. So don't go into that wedding and, you know, that be the first time that you learn how to use your camera or use your lenses, or, you know, that's the first time you're learning how to film sound. Practice all of that, and practice before the wedding, so that when you get to the wedding, when the nerves kick in, the nerves are going to kick in, when, you know, it all breaks loose, because no matter how the timeline on a wedding looks and how everybody says it's going to go according to plan, invariably things will change, and a lot of it will be run and gun. You'll be confident on your equipment and knowing how to use it, that you won't be using all of your energy in figuring out, well, how does this camera setting work and how does this lens work? You'll be confident on that, and now you can focus on, pun intended, focus on the thing that's in front of you that you're trying to be capturing, which is the wedding day itself. Trust me, that's going to go a long way. Now, the second thing, when you've now booked your wedding, my second piece of advice would be connect with the couple. You don't want to be meeting your couple for the first time on the wedding day. And that might not, if you can, try and meet them in person. Take them out for a coffee, get to know them, get to know what they are about, get to know their energy, their chemistry, ask them questions. As much info as you can get before the wedding day is only going to be to your benefit. Sometimes that's not possible, but the great thing now is we can all Zoom. We've all Zoomed over the last 2 years, so you can all Zoom, or maybe even a phone call. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask questions about how they met, what's going to be important for them on the wedding day. Why have they picked that venue? How did they plan the wedding? What are they hoping to experience on the wedding? What are they hoping that their guests experience? All these questions are going to be great clues as to what they probably want to see, probably going to want to see in their wedding video. So for example, if you're talking to a couple and they're like, you know, we picked this date because it was the first time that, you know, it's our anniversary. And if, you know, the bride's like, you know, my dad seeing me for the first time is going to be a super important moment. All of that is stuff that you can then be pre-armed with to go into that wedding, to make sure that you can capture and kind of honor in a way. So for example, if it's their anniversary, maybe you can go in and film a picture of them, you know, on the fridge or something, you know, and show that in the film as their anniversary. If it's, you know, the father, it's really important, that relationship between the father and the bride. You want to make sure that you're there for the first time that the father comes in to see the bride in her wedding dress. If they're like, oh, you know, we've picked this pub that we're getting married in because this is where we all used to gather, and my friend's going to be DJing and I can't wait to get on the dance floor because we're into 90s garage, then you know that maybe that could be a soundtrack for the wedding video, and that there's going to be a lot of fun on the dance floor, and that's going to be important for them. So all these questions that you can be asking. So the things that I would be asking are, you know, how did you meet? Why did you pick that wedding venue? Is there anything significant about the date and that month that they picked? What are they hoping to experience on the day? What do they think is going to be important to them? Who are the important people in their life? And then also, what are they hoping that their guests experience? Because they're going to be really important questions and clues as to what you want to put into the wedding video. But when it comes to filming the actual wedding day itself, is there a shot list? Are there a list of things that we can kind of go to film? And in truth, they kind of are. The great thing about a wedding and filming a wedding is that you're not filming something in isolation that's never ever happened before, right? It's not an event where you don't know what's going to happen next. The good thing about a wedding is most of the times it's going to be pre-planned out. And that's going to be another thing that's really important to get from the couple, like a timeline of the day. And that timeline of the day will most likely be a good indicator of shot lists that you can kind of think about around that timeline. So for example, here's a timeline of a wedding day. I'm just going to run it through. And these are basic events that happen at every wedding and that you can base your shot list around, for want of a better word. So for example, start of the day, where is the bride getting ready? Maybe she's getting ready in a hotel. Maybe she's getting ready in the family home. So in that kind of environment, you want to be capturing the important people at home, maybe the parents, bridesmaids, best friends, little clues, maybe the shoes, the wedding dress. Are there any things that are important? If it's at the family home, are there any things that are important to them? Sisters, pets, little things around that are a little bit of a clue. Or if it's at a hotel, when, hair and makeup, you might want to be capturing a little bit of the makeup. Towards the end, you might want to capture the bride getting into the dress. So those are the kind of things that lend itself to the bride getting ready. Then she's going to be making her way, or if it's a groom or two grooms getting married or two brides getting married, they're probably then going to be making their way from where they're getting ready to where the ceremony's taking place. Now, if it's in the same venue, that's great. You can then go to the ceremony room. But if they're getting in a car, are you going to then get a shot of the car? Are you going to be getting a shot of them getting into the car? Or are you going to get to the venue ahead of time so you can set up your cameras, be ready for them, anticipate them coming, get a shot of the ceremony building, get a shot of the outside of where they got ready, get a shot of the car as they come, get a shot of them coming out of the car, film guests arriving at the venue, at the ceremony, film the groom, say hello to the groom, film the groom as he's getting ready for the bride to come in, or the groom to see his partner come in, or a bride to see the other bride come in, depending on the kind of makeup of the couple. So those are other shot lists that you want to get. So definitely guests getting ready, the bride or groom getting ready to receive their partner coming down the aisle, the car, the venue, things like that. And then you're into the ceremony itself, on whatever significant ceremony there is there. And so you definitely want to make sure that you capture the vows, any ring exchanges, any readings, any songs, any special things that are going to be happening. So again, you want to make sure on the timeline, is there going to be a special performance when they're signing the register, for example? So you want to make sure that you capture that and bits of that. So things like that. And then there's going to be an exit as they come out of the church or come out of the ceremony. Are they going to be having confetti? Are they going to be having bubbles? Are they going to be having any type of receiving line? So you want to get yourself in place for that. And then from the ceremony, are they then getting into a car? Again, is there a special type of car that they're getting into? Again, you want to make sure that you capture that. Then they're going to be going over to the ceremony venue. Again, if it's in the same place, that's great. That's going to be a little bit easier. But things you might then want to do is go into the reception room before everybody goes in and capture details, tables, place settings. Maybe they've designed their own centerpiece for the tables. You want to make sure you capture that. Maybe there's a signing book. Maybe there's little details that they've put around the reception venue. Make sure you capture all that stuff. We call that stuff B-roll. And what B-roll is stuff that you can put over the top of your main footage to act as interest. So my advice is film as much as possible. It's better to have more and not use it than to be editing and going, man, I wish I had more that I could add in, because obviously once the wedding's finished, you don't have that. So again, you want to be filming things like, B-roll. When we say B-roll, are any kind of like the wedding reception venue. Again, the little details. Then the guests arriving, maybe the bride and groom arriving. There might be a reception as they come in. Guests having drinks, chatting, having fun, showing us what went on kind of in the day. Then the bride and groom are probably going to have some time for family portraits. You might not necessarily need to video that. That's more maybe a photographic thing. But are they going to go and have some couple shots? And here it might be good to kind of coordinate with the photographer so that, again, on the timeline, you're making sure that, the photographer's probably going to take them out and do couple shots. You can dovetail along and film kind of at a different angle. Don't get in the photographer's way. Be really respectful, really mindful. And sometimes, there's little in-between moments. For photographers, they kind of, maybe they stage the couple, and you can be filming the little bit in-between moments, maybe when they're laughing at each other or talking or walking from one place to another, and that can act as great couple shots. So you want to make sure you get some nice couple shots. And maybe, again, when they're taking the family photos, you can get some nice couple family interactions there, because you don't know when you make your film if you want to relate back to that. Then the bride and groom are probably going to be, the guests are going to, sit down in the venue ready for the meal. You might want to film that. That's always a nice moment I find when people sit down for the first time, probably sitting down to people they've never met before. There's a lot of highs, hellos, how do you do's, and so that's nice stuff that you can be capturing. Then the bride and groom are probably going to be announced in, and again, that's a nice moment to capture. So make sure you capture that. And then they're probably going to sit down. I don't like to film people when they're eating, but there's this bit before the food comes, again, where people are chatting and they're kind of relaxed, that you might want to film little bits of, little clips of, because again, that's nice footage to show things that have been going on the wedding day. Then they're probably going to eat, which is probably when you're going to have your break, get a breather, maybe reflect on any other things that you need that maybe you've missed during the day that you might, want to get. Review your gear, review your batteries, stuff like that. And then they're going to be the speeches, and that's going to be really important to make sure that you capture the speeches. Again, audio is something, and in the ceremony, audio is something you're going to need to give yourself time for to capture that audio. We're going to talk about audio gear later on, but I'm just flagging it now because audio is so important. Give yourself time for the audio. So tell the bride and groom that before the speeches start to give you a heads up. The last thing you want is to be in there enjoying your meal and suddenly you hear the father bride go ding, 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 and you're like, oh my God, I've got to set up my cameras. So you want to tell them to give you time to get on in. So you get on in, you're ready for the speeches, and now film the speeches. Little tip for the speeches, if you can, try and recommend that all the speeches either A, happen in one place, or B, you know who are doing the speeches and they stay in one spot. It's very hard to film someone who's moving around constantly, like if they're walking around. Sometimes that's going to happen in speeches and there's nothing you can do, just do the best you can. But if you can suggest these things ahead of time, it's going to save you a world of pain. So that's really important. After the speeches then, there's probably going to be another not lull, but there's going to be another bit where the bride and groom exit. This could be another time for you to do couple shots if you haven't got any. There might be a beautiful sunset that you want to capture, or it could be more of the guests enjoying the wedding venue and having a few more drinks. And then we're going to be coming into probably the cutting of the cake. So making sure that A, you film some of the cake, again, B-roll. Then B, setting yourself up if you're going to need lighting. Again, we'll talk about lighting a little bit if you need it. Setting up lighting if you need it, or if not, if you're shooting just natural light, setting your cameras up and making sure you've got the right shot for the cutting of the cake. And then probably for the first cutting of the cake, they're going to move very quickly into the first dance. A lot of times you find that they'll cut the cake on the dance floor and then go straight into the first dance. So you want to be ready to transition from one to the other. First dance, again, is usually a slower song most of the times. So that's another chance for you to capture your breath, capture the first dance. We're going to talk about camera angles and lenses, but usually I would recommend having 2 cameras at your wedding, having a wide on a tripod, a stand. We'll talk about this in the gear section and show you when we go to shooting the wedding, like how you can do this. A wide of the dance floor, and then having another camera in your hands that has more of a telephoto lens, is more close up, so that you can cut between the two. And then after the first dance, most likely that all the guests are going to join in. And what I find is that first 2 songs right after the first dance are when everybody passes onto the dance floor. So you want to make sure that you're capturing a lot of the high fives and the hugs and all that kind of stuff. And then generally what happens is sometimes there's a little bit of a lull in dance floor as everybody goes off for the evening buffet, or people catch their breath, they might go out for a chat. And then they come back on the dance floor. And so you want to be making sure that you're capturing the dance floor footage again, so that you've got the dance floor footage. And then just before you leave, always say goodbye to the bride and groom. Tell them that you think you've got everything. Ask them if there's anything you think they might want to get. You never know. You know, maybe there's a grandma or an auntie that came from abroad that you didn't capture, and they say, oh, did we get footage of that? Did you get footage of the shoes? Did you get footage of this, that, the other? That's the last chance for them just to flag anything, and that's your last chance to film it, or to kind of cover yourself and then film it, and then you're kind of done for the day. So as you can see, the timeline kind of dictates the shot list. In terms of must-have shots, I would definitely say, for me, would be making sure number one, you have enough B-roll. So a lot of details. So venue details, outside of the building, decorations, stuff like that. If I'm honest, that stuff though is secondary to the main shots, which for me are number one, the main interactions of the bride and groom with either each other, so vows, first kiss, speeches, first dance, first time they see each other, and then the bride and groom, or grooms and grooms, or bride and brides with their, their family and friends. So for example, the bride the first time sees the dad and the bride in the car. That's generally a traditional thing that happens. The groom with his mum, the groom with his dad, the groom with the best man, the groom with the groomsmen, the bride with her bridesmaids, so those kind of things. The ceremony, rings, that's really important, ring shots, ceremony, first kiss, coming down the aisle, confetti shot, couple shots, family shots, guests having fun at the reception, bride and groom coming into the reception, speeches, first dance, cutting cake, dance floor. I would say that's about everything. And then anything and everything around that. You never know what happens at a wedding. It's a life event. It's a live event. Anything can happen. Is there a cute dog? Is there cute kids? Is there a crazy auntie breakdancing on the dance floor? You never know what's going to happen. So just be ready to film all of that. And then you'll have all of that to then have for your edit. Now, when it comes to editing, there are different ways that you can approach it. And so you could either do a chronological, an easy one is a chronological, like moment by moment of the day in a wedding film, or nowadays people highlight almost music video films. So, a lot of the time the speeches will be the narrative underneath, and then you'll be placing shots over those speeches to kind of tell a story over the day. And it doesn't have to be chronological, it can go back and forth. And so whether you're doing the chronological, or you're doing a kind of montage, or you're doing kind of a feature film kind of style, you want to have, I can't say this enough, more footage than not, because you want to make sure you have enough to tell an interesting story. And I think when you first start out, it's better to have more than less, because you haven't got the experience yet to know what needs to be captured. As you do this more and more and more and more, you'll kind of know what are the things you need to get. But when you first start out, capture anything and everything. But when it comes down to it, one of the main things you need to do is prepare. So like we said, going back, once you've got your first wedding under your bag, or you've got a wedding, I would say meet with the couple, question them as much as you can, get a timeline, get to know as many details as you can, get your kit ready, know how to use your kit, and kind of then mentally work through the day, have a kind of shot list prepared from everything we've talked about, and that will prepare you, give you enough preparation for on the wedding day, giving your best self and the best of yourself, getting the best shots and getting the best footage that you can then use in the edit. So hopefully that's been helpful. I know there was a lot of information there, but the great thing about video is you can go back and rewind and watch it again. So hopefully there's a lot there. But in the next few videos, don't worry, I know there's a lot of things I kind of mentioned. We're going to be covering gear, what I recommend in terms of gear that you need, in terms of camera, lenses, audio, and then all the other things that you need to shoot a wedding. And then the best thing is we're going to actually be doing a live demonstration at a kind of mock-up wedding, and I'm going to be going through how I would shoot those different scenes and giving you some advice on holding the camera, how I would shoot that, settings, and things you need to be thinking about. And so hopefully in the next couple of videos, they're going to be a little bit more practical, and when you put it all together, that will give you enough as you go in to shoot your first wedding.